Welcome in, everybody, to the Blazers Uprise Postgame show. We're recapping the second preseason game, once again against the Sacramento Kings. This one went a little bit differently than the last one, but we got some more Blazer basketball in our system. We'll give you our takeaways on some of the players. We probably won't go as in-depth as we did last stream, considering a lot of guys barely played. We'll talk about Rodney Hood's return, which was, just exciting just to see him out there on the floor. Still looks weird with that hair, but, we're the, maybe the team with the best or worst hair in the league, depending on how you look at it. I wish championships were decided based on hair because, man, we got some unique hairstyles on the team, to say the least. So, we'll recap everything for you guys. Welcome in. Hope you guys enjoyed that game. Let me just start with one quick little thing. Let's not overreact to the preseason. That is my main thing to that because, I don't know, man. It's just like I see some people, not everybody, and this is probably the minority, but I see some people out there that after the first preseason games, they were saying, oh, we're contenders, we're going to win the championship. And those same people after this game are now very concerned about our team going into the season, or kind of, that's kind of the tenor from some people. It's just so reactionary to one game to the next. And we definitely didn't look as good in this game, but some of that was good shots, not falling as much. Some of that was maybe some things that we can shore up, but we'll focus on all that. And it's the preseason. Guys are going to be rusty. The team's not going to be clicking on all cylinders. So
you know what's funny? Even before this game, I saw some people panicking watching Golden State the night before, being like, "Oh no, Golden State looks really good. They're better than us." It's like, how can you judge that off a preseason game?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me, man. It's just the preseason. Even like 5 games into the regular season, I feel like people are just a little too reactionary, like right at the start of the season. Once we get into the thick of things, I think, we kind of get a better feel for this team. People won't be as reactionary. It's just like we got a brand new team. Not a brand new team, but we got some brand new players on this team. And I don't know, man. It's not like they've fit in poorly. I like the pieces we have on this team. There's really nobody that annoys me out on the court, and that's the first time I can say that in my lifetime as a Blazer fan. There's really nobody that annoys me when they're out there on the court. I know a lot of people are being hard on the Rook, which doesn't make much sense. We'll get into that. And we'll also take your questions because we didn't really do that much last stream on Friday. So, thank you guys for tuning in. Let's jump straight into some of the team-based things as we always start off with. I'll start this time. Let's start on the defensive end because I think that's kind of the main focus this preseason. We know we're going to be a good offensive team. Let's start on the defensive end. And we saw a lot of pick-and-roll hedging, which I like. There were some mistakes, though, that we were making when hedging pick and rolls that we got to shore up. Nurkic, especially, I think, is actually very good at hedging pick and rolls. This is why I didn't think we needed to drop Nurkic off the pick and roll during the bubble last season. He looked really good hedging screens. He hedged screens well. He was a presence. He recovered quickly. He recovered properly. Sometimes we still gave up points when he hedged pick and rolls, but it wasn't due to him. It was due to other mistakes that I think we can shore up the more we do it, since a lot of guys on this team aren't used to running a hedge pick and roll defensive scheme. So there were some things I liked from it, some things I didn't like. I want to know if you have the same opinion on a couple of the things that were going wrong when we were hedging pick and rolls. One is I felt like we weren't hedging tight enough, which left a window for them to just pass the ball to the rolling big man. And then 2, I felt like our guard wasn't hustling to get back in front of the ball, allowing the big to recover back to their man. Those were kind of my 2 main takeaways.
Yeah, and here's the thing with that. I like that we're doing it now, though, because this is the problem. When we've gotten into the playoffs and we have to do a hedge or some sort of different type of defensive pressure out of the pick and roll, we haven't ever done it all season. So the parts you're seeing now where we need to work on that, it gives me hope that throughout the season, then by the time we hit the playoffs, we'll be pros at hedging it and knowing what to do and the guard fighting over more and all that stuff. So I'm hoping that that's just a precursor to us actually doing different things and being able to switch up our defense at different points against different teams. Because like you wouldn't play a team like the Kings with Darren Fox as a point guard the same way you would play Golden State with Steph Curry as their point guard. Like Fox, you want him to kind of shoot threes on the run more, and with Curry, he would absolutely obliterate you if you did that. So
exactly.
The problem is in the past is we've had the same sort of defensive pressure no matter who that guard is, and now I hope that just leads to us being able to somewhat competently like play defense no matter who the guard is, and we can switch it up and be comfortable doing so.
I just like that we're doing something different. For those of you that watched me last season, I wanted us to stop dropping the big, not 100% of the time. I just wanted us to switch things up. So it's just nice to see something different. And I feel like the areas we're struggling are obvious areas of improvement. Here's how I kind of summarize my feeling on the defense during the first half when we had a lot of like our main guys in. My feeling was there were certain aspects of defensive possessions that were really encouraging, where guys were doing things really, really well, and where we were doing things defensively that we weren't really doing last year, whether that would be rotating out to shooters well, closing out well, contesting well, or closing out and not letting the opposing player blow by, to hedging properly and recovering properly. Like, there was a lot of flashes of like really good defensive things, but then during a lot of those possessions, one guy would make a silly defensive mistake and they'd score because of it, if that makes sense. Or like, the big would hedge properly, and that's encouraging. Seeing Nurkic hedge well on screens is encouraging, but then the guard wouldn't fight through, and then, it would lead to a straight line drive and then a defense breakdown, that type of thing.
Or someone would overhelp on the backside and give up a three.
Exactly. But I'm seeing things defensively that we didn't do last season, and that has me encouraged because I feel like a lot of like the mistakes are silly mistakes that are fixable and that we'll fix as we get into the season, whereas like some of the things we're doing, we didn't do properly all season long last year, mainly like backside defensive rotations, and we still had some mistakes, but it looked better tonight than it did in other games. And the fact that we're hedging and we seem more connected, which was a point of emphasis going into this training camp. It was something that Robert Covington brought up, that he felt like we needed, or the Portland Trailblazers needed to be more connected. Of course, he went from going against us to now he can help us with that because that's something he's great at. So the connectivity seems better than it was at any point last year. You know what I mean? So there's certain things about our defense that have me really encouraged, and a lot of the mistakes I see, they're kind of frustrating, but it's also, some of it I think is a lack of focus because it's preseason, and some of it is stuff that I feel like we'll just shore up by playing more basketball.
Well, actually, the first like 3 or 4 possessions, we played like a 2-3 zone, because Nurk was just like standing in the middle, and then you had the two guys on the side. I
wasn't paying that hard attention at the start. I was still warming up, man.
Yeah, but like it was like we'd start in zone, and then Nurk would kind of match up with whatever player was closest to the paint, so he didn't get like a 3-second or illegal defense called, and then it became like a matchup zone out of that, but. It was kind of interesting that I wonder if that's because Derrick Jones Jr. was better in that kind of situation last year defensively. Maybe we're trying to see if that works. I just hope for those that throughout the year we'll probably get this a lot where people will say like, well, you wanted them to hedge picks and stuff like that. And you wanted them to play this way on defense and not drop the big. And that is never what we say. We always say we want the ability to be unpredictable. And predictability on defense never works out in the playoffs.
It allows the offense to get comfortable because they know exactly how you're going to guard them every time down the court. And, they have the same reads to make all game long. They come off a pick and roll and see the same defense, 10 times in a row during the course of a game. They're going to improve at attacking that throughout the course of a game just through repetition, right? It's just like how it is when you practice anything. The more repetitions you get, the more efficient you get at something, the more you improve at something. So that happens during the course of a game when you run the same defense all game long and NBA guards are able to make the same reads and know exactly what they're going into. If you were an opposing team last year going up against the Portland Trailblazers, knew going into the game how they were going to be guarded, right? They knew Portland's defensive game plan, and they could game plan their offense based around attacking our defense because they knew what our defense was going to be, because we only ran one defense. So the key for me is just being able to switch things up, some of that maybe throwing out that 2-3 zone a little bit just to throw a little wrinkle in. I don't want to rely on it too much, because I think if you try and use it too much, teams will start to exploit it. But just for a wrinkle, just to throw them off balance, get them out of their comfort zone, just to give them something else, and then defend in the pick and roll different ways. And that's why I'm also encouraged, is because Stotts is hedging the big, and I don't know if we ever dropped on a pick and roll, but I'm not saying that we shouldn't ever drop the big and we should always hedge or always trap. I just think we should throw different wrinkles in a team to keep them off balance, to keep them from being able to predict how we're going to guard them every possession during the entire game, and to make it so that a team going into a matchup with us doesn't 100% know exactly how we're going to defend them. So I think that's basically the thing with that, is just got to be unpredictable defensively in how you guard things.
Yep. I just don't want to see a case where it's going to struggle for a while if you try new things with new people, especially with how short this offseason is. So I want them, even if some of the things don't work, they still need to stick with them. So like we said, once it comes time to winning time in the playoffs, we know how to guard different teams and can switch it up. Whereas in previous seasons, we've seen this a couple games in a preseason, and then all of a sudden we just abandon it because it's not working. So, hopefully that's not the case this year. We need to stick with it. We have the personnel to make it work eventually. They just need to figure out how to all become a unit yet, and they haven't had enough practices to do so.
Yeah, and as a coaching staff, you just got to be willing to go through some growing pains with your team early on, right? Maybe you lose a game or two just because you're trying to be more creative defensively and get the players used to the scheme. Yeah, you might give up a game or two, but honestly, in the middle of the season or the end of the season, you'll probably at least make that game or two back because you're willing to take some lumps early on, deal with some growing pains in order to truly become a diverse defensive team in terms of the way you guard things, in terms of the schemes you run. So that's the thing, is we need to be the best possible version of ourselves during the playoffs, right? We shouldn't sacrifice how good we are during the end of the season and during the playoffs in order to win an extra game or two early, if that makes sense. So, I hope he doesn't abandon it. There's definitely some things we need to shore up, and I can get into a little clipboard study here in a second just to kind of fully showcase just one specific thing that I think we need to shore up a little bit in terms of hedging the pick and roll. But yeah, we just gotta be willing to take some growing pains early in order to truly get a handle on running different schemes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, let me bring out that clipboard right now, because this is probably the easiest way to showcase it. I wish I could show footage. I wish I could show footage on a live stream, but, copyright issues and whatnot, I can't. That would be amazing. These streams would be perfect if I could do that, but that's not the case. So, we gotta hide Eric here and bring out the good old clipboard, all right? So, yeah, here we go. Wait, I didn't want to maximize it. There we go. Okay. So, here's one of the biggest issues we were doing when hedging the pick and roll. We honestly only need the point guard and the center to showcase this. We can get literally everybody else out of there. So, here's the deal. When you hedge a pick and roll, Blue is Sacramento or the opposing team, whatever. They come up and set this pick and roll, right? You have Dame on the ball. He can go over or under. It doesn't necessarily matter a whole lot since this big is helping. He can go under and you still have the three taken away. Just whatever's the quickest way for Dame to get through the screen, or whoever's guarding the ball, is the way that they should go through the pick. But the problem is this guy is not hedging tight enough, because this guy's coming up and hedging, but he's hedging too far out. The problem with that is if he hedges too far out and this guy rolls, it leaves a window of space for the point guard to just drop this pass in between these two guys to the center, and then oftentimes you have to have this was CJ Ellaby actually multiple possessions tonight. CJ Ellaby would have to come over and try and defend the big, and it's just not necessarily like, you got a big man going towards the rim against usually a wing or a forward. That's not a good matchup, and oftentimes they'll leave kickouts open or whatnot. So I think the thing we need to fix is we need the center to hedge a little tighter, a little closer to the screen. And what that'll do is when this guy rolls, you don't have the same window of space. And it makes it a lot harder for this guard to get the ball to the center because he doesn't have as much of a window in between these guys. He either has to throw it over or has to somehow find a way around to get it around. By that time, you got Dame in front. The last part of hedging is for this guy to recover, right? So the issue I saw tonight is we were just leaving a little bit too much space when the center hedged in between here for the point guard to throw the ball. And if this is a really good point guard, he could also split it off the dribble, which is the worst case scenario. I think we just got to hedge a little bit tighter in order to take away that passing lane. Does that make sense?
Yep.
So, yeah, sorry if I'm stumbling over my words a little bit, but yeah, that's basically one of the main issues, and that's very fixable. You know what I mean? You're talking about a guy like, honestly, Nurk hedged pretty tightly, and I felt like when Nurkic was in the game hedging, they weren't getting that pass through to the big because Nurkic was hedging tighter and hedging a little bit harder, and it took away that passing lane. But if the big doesn't hedge hard enough, it leaves that window of space to drop the ball to the big, and I feel like they got a lot of offense early because of that. It wasn't them scoring because we were hedging. It was them scoring because we weren't doing a good enough job of hedging, if that makes sense.
Yep. And then on top of that, I felt like we gave up way too many threes this game.
Yeah. I mean, the rotations are a little slow right now, but that is to be expected early on in the season. I want to see them improve because I felt like the defensive rotations didn't improve much last season. I expect them to improve given the guys we have and given hopefully a heightened emphasis on defense this season. So I expect it to improve. Recognition defensively of certain situations is going to be a little slow until they get back in the swing of things. This is literally the second preseason game. They haven't really been able to practice much. So they're going to be, on defense, we're going to be a little slow recognizing certain situations and knowing where we should be. So stuff like that is something that I'm not really worried about, That's not something that I'm going to worry about because I expect it to get better. So that's kind of my whole point about things is I'm encouraged by some of the things we're doing defensively. I think some of the mistakes we're making are a little bit fixable, and then some of the other mistakes will be fixed just by getting into the swing of things and playing basketball.
And having our starters play together.
And having our starters, too, yeah. But defensively, I think our best lineup was when we had, and this was kind of the lineup that we wanted to see. It was when Gary Trent Jr., Derrick Jones Jr., Robert Covington, and Harry Giles were on the floor. I felt like that was our best defensive lineup. We saw it for a little bit there. CJ was the point guard, so I want to see that lineup with Dame, just a fun lineup. But I felt like defensively that lineup played really, really well and was on a string and just looked probably the best out of any defensive lineup we threw out there tonight.
Dude, when Giles came in, so his first defensive possession, he gets a steal, dribbles the ball up the court, dishes it to Derrick Jones Jr. for a dunk, so he gets an assist on it. And we come back from down big in the first half in the last few minutes of the second quarter to making it a game again, and it was pretty much all him. I'm not blaming our starters or anything because they barely played, but that was all he's such a difference maker when he's healthy and when he's playing like that. Just between the energy and the skill set, it's rare that you see both of those come together with a player. I don't know. I'm really high on both his effort and his energy. He made a couple plays today where he just stuck with it and took the ball from someone and got a dunk or a bucket because he outworked someone for a ball that the other team should have had. I definitely think that's the definite bright spot of this game and the first game as well.
Yeah, I have a question for you in chat. I want you to answer this as well. Who would be your backup center on opening night as of now, Cantor or Giles?
What would you say, Giles?
I'm asking you, and I'm asking chat, so I was waiting for your answer.
Yeah, everyone's gonna say Giles.
I know everybody's gonna say Giles. I feel like it's a little bit more of a debate. I feel like people. Okay, fans are a little bit prisoner of the moment. And I am too. And honestly, I don't disagree with saying Giles. I figured it was going to be pretty down the board like we're seeing right now.
Right. I think Jackson has it right. It might be matchup based in some situations. You saw a few minutes where they both were in there. Didn't it look too bad? So maybe he can get some minutes at the 4 as well.
We just have so much forward depth that it's like, I don't know. If Melo's having a tough game, maybe, which Melo kind of was for a bit tonight, and we'll talk about that, but it's a legitimate debate now, and I'm kind of curious what Stotts does, because Stotts generally leans towards the veteran, and Kanter is a guy that we've had in here, so it's going to be an interesting debate as to, is he going to play the young guy who's kind of showing out right now, or is he going to roll with Kanter? Let me just say this about Kanter, though, like, he plays better than this. He is a better player than he's played the first 2 preseason games. Like, he's missed a lot of shots that he normally makes, right? And I see a lot of people saying, dang, what happened to Kanter? Like, he's just struggling in 2 preseason games, That doesn't mean he's, like, any worse. Or, like, we saw him in the playoffs in late September for the Boston Celtics have some really good games, really good stretches in the playoffs. He didn't play much, but when he got in, he played really, really well and finished pretty much everything around the rim back in late September. His finishing ability didn't just completely fall off a cliff from late September to December. You know what I mean? Like, he's just missing shots. It's only 2 games. He just struggled a little bit, and he's better than this. We should know that.
Well, for one, I think obviously Giles is a way more exciting and more fun player to watch. So most people are going to enjoy watching him play more than a guy who, like Kanter, who isn't really athleticism based in his game at all, or things like that. But Kanter played 12 minutes tonight, was 4 from 8 from the field, had 8 and 4 in 12 minutes. It's not like he was terrible. He had a couple stretches in the second half too, where he had a post up where he scored, and then the next play he posted up again and scored, and then the next possession had an offensive rebound. So yeah, it's like it's I don't know. Kanter is good. His skill set is something we need. But if Giles does take a hold of that and Collins eventually comes back healthy, I think it would be, because Kanter has one of those contracts that's very tradable too. It's an expiring $5 million contract. So maybe we realize we do need some guard insurance or something like that, and we can go out and move him for a guard, and we still have Giles and Collins and Nurk and stuff. So I think it'll all work out. But I like you, I'm interested to see what Stotts decides, because that's ultimately who will be the decision maker on that.
Yeah, because some people say Giles is a 4, they can play both, but Covington's the starting 4, Melo's the backup 4. You don't have minutes there, right? Unless you don't play one of those guys. So it's going to come down to opening night. It's going to come down where you can't play both Kanter and Giles. Well, I think you have to choose between one of them.
Well, you could play Rocco or Melo at the 3 a little bit, I guess.
And then cut whose minutes? You know what I mean? Cut Hood's.
If Hood's because they're saying Hood's going to be limited for a while. So,
but let me just say this: I think Derek Jones Jr. deserves legitimate playing time, right? Yeah. We already went on a rant about why my opinion on that pickup has kind of changed. We did that last stream, and I know we're gonna hear about it. But bro, speaking on Derek Jones Jr., I think he's going to be a decent shooter this year. His shot looks so much better than it did a year ago. That's not BS. You can go and compare his shot a year ago to his shot now, and it's a far more smoother release, has less of a hitch in his shooting elbow, because he was a guy who rotated his shooting elbow, kind of popped his shooting elbow out when he followed through, and now it's a lot more solid in that regard. He's not popping it out. He doesn't have that hitch in his shooting elbow. And his, like, dude, his stroke looks good. His release looks good. His rhythm looks good. The flow in which he shoots with looks good. He shot 2 for 5 from 3 tonight. He shot 2 for 2 from 3 in the first preseason game. That's 4 for 7 from 3. I know it's preseason, only 2 games, right? So, yeah, he's obviously not going to shoot 55% or whatever that is. But I think he's going to be a decent enough shooter where, like, he will make teams pay if they leave him. You combine that with everything else he brings, like, he deserves legitimate minutes. And then Hood off the bench, even if Hood's playing like 15 minutes, that's still a lot. I don't know. It's just hard to like figure out the minutes with playing Giles at the 4 and then moving Rocco down to the 3 and then taking away from Derek Jones Jr. Like, I would rather give Derek Jones Jr. more minutes than Kanter. You know what I mean? So that's the thing, is I think it comes back to it's going to have to be a decision between Kanter and Giles. And right now, I would pick Giles just because he's a better defender. He provides that consistent playmaking. He provides that finishing ability. He is a threat on dribble handoffs to fake the dribble handoff and turn the corner explosively and make a play going downhill. Like, and we use so many dribble handoffs that's a good fit. Like, his skill set is a really good fit at the center spot. It's a really, really good fit, and he's been balling out. So I would probably go with Giles now. It's a hot debate. I can't remember the last time there was a positional battle that will be this hotly debated going into opening night as Kanter versus Giles, and I think Stotts is going to have a tough decision on his hands.
I'm still one of the things I still want to see, we talked about this last game, is Dame and Giles haven't played a lot together, so it's going to be imperative for Giles to set good picks for Dame in that pick and roll, because during the regular season that's Dame's bread and butter, and if he's not setting strong enough picks in that situation, it might favor Kanter playing over that. But as long as he can set good picks, he's a great outlet. The offense, we got to talk about whatever offense we were running tonight. I don't even know what that was, but
it was brutal. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I'll have a video on it, probably a little bit later, just kind of talking about that positional battle, man. Because it's a good problem to have, considering our backup center last year was supposed to be Pau Gasol, and then it was. I mean, Scal did a decent job, but Giles and Kanter, I think, are better than Scal for as underrated as I think Scal is. I think Scal should definitely be in the NBA, not the G League, which he's on a G League deal with the Knicks, dude. He should be in the NBA. Scal's underrated, man. I love Scal, but Giles and Kanter are both better than him, and one of them, I think, is going to have to get the short end of the stick. And maybe it is a situational, matchup dependent thing. And if we get into foul trouble, if Nurkic picks up like 3 fouls early, I'm not worried like I used to be just because of this depth. So it is definitely a good problem to have. It's just going to be interesting to see how it plays itself out.
Also, to Nurk, I mean, he's only had, 3 or 4 practices, and he was in Bosnia, so who knows what kind of shape he's in. So it might be a situation where at the beginning of the year he's not pressed for big minutes. Maybe he's down in the lower 20s or playing only, half the game versus 30-plus minutes like he was in the bubble.
Yeah, but I'll get into the box score in a second. Yeah. We've already talked about some individuals, so we won't spend as long as we did the last stream. But offensively, it was kind of frustrating considering how well we moved the ball. Like in the first preseason game, it was kind of frustrating to see how ISO heavy we got, especially in the late first into the second quarter. It just seemed like we had a lineup with Melo, Rodney Hood, and CJ in the lineup, and it seemed like every time down, no play call was set. They weren't even looking to run. It was just dribble the ball down, throw the ball into somebody, and they ISO, and they go one-on-one. We had Kanter in the game as well, and he went one-on-one a couple times in the post. It was just like every time down, it was just strict isolation. And if Melo's hot and the rest of the offense is struggling, okay, I'm cool with Melo isolating and shooting whatever, right? But Melo wasn't hot, and it seemed like he was forcing his shot a bit, and that is going to be something that I hope isn't really the case. I think Melo honestly gets hot by playing off the ball, and then once he's hot, then his face up mid-range work out of the post, out of the mid post, then that stuff starts falling. I think Melo builds a rhythm by just catching and shooting and playing off the ball and getting shots that way. But it seemed like, he was struggling, so we were just forcing the ball to him, and he was isolating and shooting some tough mid-range twos, and he wasn't hot, and he was missing them because he didn't get going before he kind of went into that. And I hope that it isn't quite as ISO heavy with Melo when he's not hot as it was tonight, because we fed him like 4 times in the course of 2 minutes, and he settled for like 4 contested mid-range shots. I think he made 1, and it's just like we got good enough players to get him better shots and get him going off the ball, which I think is generally at this point in his career the way he gets going.
I'll get my thoughts on that in a second. I just want to say I really appreciate the way Block Boy has been commenting lately. Earlier on in the stream, he said like he's willing to accept if someone else is hotter than Melo, that Melo shouldn't be taking the ball away from those
by the way, Block Boy is our resident Melo fan. Yeah. He's the number 1 Melo fan.
He gave us a lot of crap last year about being haters and stuff like that, which now we have a whole new group of that, but we'll move on from that. But he just said, I'm going to call Melo. Teams are doubling him in year 18. He's got to pass off those double teams. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Like, I appreciate you actually being objective about it this year. And I felt like at times last year you weren't objective, and you just, like, we weren't allowed to criticize Melo at all, and you just get on our case. I do appreciate that you're being objective. But
I will say this, nobody else off the ball was even moving. So it was kind of like ball gets thrown into the post, isolation, and like Melo's like, okay, I'll make something happen one-on-one. And even when he got doubled, it's like guys weren't really cutting to the right spots that they should have been. So maybe that was part of it. Because in the first game, Melo made a couple nice passes when he was doubled, but guys were cutting, so it was like to cutters. One especially was to Giles, if you remember that play in the first preseason game, where Giles just cut down the lane. He showed because Melo was doubled and they weren't paying him attention, and he ended up getting a layup out of it. So it's not 100% on Melo, but yeah, I wish he would just, like, if he's not going yet, I wish he would just kind of let the offense come to him, because there's talented enough players out there on the court where he'll get open catch and shoot shots, and I feel like that's at this point in his career generally how he gets going. And actually, I understand his he said we came up in the same neighborhood, so I'm a little more Melo sensitive. I admit that. Okay, that's I respect that. So when it's a guy in real life, that's definitely it makes a ton of sense. I am a number 1 Harry Giles fan out here right now just because he gave our channel a shout out, right? So but. Yeah, I mean, just the Melo experiment will be interesting to watch this season, just to see like how it plays out with him off the bench and exactly how we like kind of run things through it. But yeah, the offense was really stagnant. I'll let you touch on that.
I literally wrote down, "What are we doing on offense?" ? LOL. So that was part of my notes. Like, it's just like, so obviously tonight there's no Ant because he had a sore hamstring. They weren't going to play CJ as backup point because normally CJ would be in a point guard then. But, you have, like, Ellaby running the point or Trent running the point.
Yeah.
And, like, those guys don't know how to run the offense. But they were just, like, taking turns passing to someone and going ISO while all the other 4 people stood around. And if that's the kind of offense we run, I would say just give it to Melo in those situations, because I'd rather trust him to post up and shoot than do anything else with any of those other guys if we're not going to pass the ball or have any ball movement or have any like off ball screens or anything like that.
Here's the thing. Okay, let me just touch on the lack of a point guard in that lineup thing. All right, you don't need a point guard in order to move off the ball. Like,
well, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You know what I mean? Yeah, it's just we need to get better at not being in a structured set, but like moving properly out of freelance half-court offense, if that makes sense. Guys cutting, guys setting screens for each other that aren't like design screens as part of a set, but just kind of freelancing off the ball and getting movement that way, right? Because if we're in a half-court offense, we don't need a point guard to do that type of stuff, right? But it's almost like I saw some fans say, well, this is what happens when you don't have a point guard in the lineup. I don't think that's entirely the case there.
Yeah. And you already touched on this. You said this exact thing that I wrote down. I wrote, in Melo's defense, no one else was doing anything when he had the ball. They'd all just stand there. And there was a couple times where someone was standing there and they'd be open because their guy went to double team or whatever. But like, no one's cutting to the basket, no one's moving, no one's like clapping for the ball or like setting picks for anyone or moving. So like, I don't blame Melo for shooting in those situations because it was clearly just post Melo and that's all we had on offense. And
yeah, and if it wasn't Melo, it was like
something. Yeah.
If it wasn't Melo, it was like post Rodney Hood or post Ennis Cantor or I mean like or CJ 1-on-1 at the perimeter. You know what I mean? And we can kind of get away with that for stretches during the regular season. Problem is, if we do that type of stuff in the playoffs, we generally like can't keep up with contention level teams if we're not like if Melo isn't hot or if CJ isn't hot and they're forcing a bunch of isolation looks, because oftentimes those looks aren't the best looks where they can knock them down if they're hot. So I'm cool with them shooting those if they like have it going or if the offense is struggling, right? If it's already struggling already when we're trying to move the ball and guys aren't making open shots. But I feel like we resort to that too much, and I almost feel like it's a cascade effect, right? It's like we have one possession where somebody ISOs and nobody moves, and then like the next time it's like, okay, it's a different guy ISO possession, nobody moves, and it's like, okay, it happened twice in a row, and it's like almost like they get comfortable with like, okay, this is how we're gonna run every possession where we just let somebody ISO and we stand around, and we get kind of like stuck in a rut during games for stretches where we just ISO and don't get the best looks. And honestly, you know what's funny is like that'll happen even during the regular season. We'll fall behind and then we'll start moving the ball and we'll catch up and we'll build a rhythm and we'll build a bunch of confidence and a bunch of momentum and a bunch of energy, and the ball will be zipping and we'll be playing with the spark and we'll get back into the game because of that. But that part is just kind of a little bit frustrating because it's like, why can't we at least try to do that in the first place? I understand if like ball movement doesn't work, player movement doesn't work, and we're like not making shots just because guys are missing shots or because the other team is playing good defense or whatnot. But it just seems like stretches. And this is in past seasons. It's not like just a preseason overreaction thing. It's just something that I saw tonight, and I've seen in previous seasons where we don't really make much of an effort. Like for a whole quarter, we'll just like, okay, we're not going to try and move the ball. We're not going to try and move off the ball. We're just going to let people ISO and just kind of stand around. And that part is a little bit frustrating to me, just because I feel like we should always be trying to move the ball and move players. At least, you know, if things aren't working out in terms of isolation, we should at least be trying to do that sooner instead of waiting till we're down 20 to start moving the ball and running good offense.
And this is why I don't blame Melo for what happened tonight, because I truly believe, I talked about this last post game, if we're telling Melo, look, when you get the ball in those post-ups, if you get a lot of defensive attention, look for this guy flashing down the middle of the paint. Look for this pin down screen in the corner. That guy should be open if you're getting double teamed. Look for this backdoor cut on this by the player in this position or whatever. Melo's a smart enough player. He's like really good at knowing what to do in certain situations. So like that to me leads me to believe that the plays tonight were basically like, we don't have a point guard. Let's just post up Melo. Let's just do this. Yeah. And like, we weren't even like trying to do anything. And part of that might be by design. Maybe we just didn't want to like showcase anything we were working on, and we were kind of doing that on purpose. And you know, why not just let Melo post up and have fun or whatever? Because we obviously don't care about the outcome of this game. But I just hope as the season goes along, we see less and less of those situations where if we're gonna ISO, it's not just an ISO play, and if we score, we score. If we don't, we don't. Because those type of plays need to have other options for when they're not working. And I believe even the ISO heavy players like Melo and CJ, if you are coaching them to look at certain players or knowing that certain players will be open when you do this kind of ISO situation, that they're smart enough to make those passes, and I think it'll be contagious throughout the team, and it'll lead to less ISO and more ball movement if we're less stagnant for the four guys not doing the ISO. But yeah, so I'm just hoping to see that in the future.
Yeah, and let me just say, like, if that happens during the regular season, I think you have to put a little bit of it on Stotts, right? Like, yes, the players got to have to take it upon themselves to move better off the ball and and set screens for each other out of freelance and maybe push the pace and whatnot. Yes, that is like a player controlled thing, but if we get stagnant for a couple possessions and don't get good shots, 2-3 possessions in a row, there should be a timeout call, and he should be pressuring the players to move a little bit more, move the ball a little bit more. But I almost feel like we'll go into those stretches and Stotts is completely fine with it, and guys, it doesn't matter if we take 5 bad shots in a row out of isolation. Stotts is just kind of like, oh, well, we're just missing shots, and that's kind of what he'll say in post-game interviews at times, whereas I wish Stotts would kind of maybe emphasize that a little bit harder. I felt like there's some post-game interviews last season where he should have been saying we didn't move the ball well enough and we didn't get good shots because we were kind of just settling for one-on-one basketball and they were defending us well and we were able to get guys going that way, right? I felt like that was an explanation for a lot of games last season, but what was said was we're just missing shots, So I do think, I'm not going to say it now because as you said, maybe we're saving stuff for the regular season, but I do think you got to put a little bit of it on the coaching because I think it needs to be an emphasis to move the ball, especially if we're getting stagnant and we're not getting good shots and nobody's hot and we're struggling offensively because of that.
And this is the whole reason why we were upset initially at the Derrick Jones Jr. signing, is because if we're just going to play like that, like we did in the second quarter of this game, it doesn't make sense to sign a guy like that versus someone who might be a little better in those situations. So we need to adjust to fitting what's right for our personnel versus doing that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I will say this, Derrick Jones Jr., he's a guy that it seems like it doesn't matter if the offense is stagnant, he still wants to cut. So, yeah. That's a good part of it. There was a pass from Dame where Dame drove baseline and tried to kick it out to Derrick Jones Jr. for 3, but Derrick Jones Jr. had started cutting. And that to me, I was laughing because it was like Dame is so used to guys not cutting in that situation and just standing there on the 3-point line. If Dame knew Derrick Jones Jr. was cutting there, that's a dunk. You know what I mean? That's a dunk. And that's why I got so frustrated with guys like Harkless who would just stand on the 3-point line and spot up, and Dame would kick it out to him and he'd shoot like 34%. Whereas if he cut, he could get possibly a dunk because Dame has all the defense drawn to him, jumping at his they think he might reverse it, so they're jumping at that. They're up in the air, it's not like they can easily recover back to a cutter, and the middle's wide open. And guys just sat on the 3-point line. It didn't matter if it was Evan Turner, Al-Farouq Aminu, Maurice Harkless, Kent Bazemore, and that's what was frustrating. Is we need more cutting. Guys need to cut there, especially if they're not great shooters. If that's like Seth Curry, then okay, I understand him standing on the 3-point line, right? But other guys like Aminu, Harkless, the guys I just listed, they should be cutting there. And Derrick Jones Jr., on that specific play, he cut, and it was like Dame has been so used to guys not cutting there that he thought Derrick Jones Jr. was going to stay there at the 3-point line. And that, once they get more chemistry, Dame will expect that, and I think that will be a good thing, because guys definitely should cut. Dame draws so much attention on him when he drives. There are cutting lanes available where, if I'm standing out there on the 3-point line and I'm Derrick Jones Jr. and I'm athletic as hell and I see my defender's head turn to watch Dame, I'm blowing by him hoping Dame can find me cutting the lane, because my defender is no longer paying any attention to me. He's watching Dame, he's watching the ball. He's not going to see me cut behind him. And I could even cut in front of him, He's not going to be ready for that because he's not paying me any attention. And that's, hopefully kind of my hope with Derrick Jones Jr. and why my tenor has kind of changed. Because at first it's great. With the way we play, with how we've used Al-Farouq Aminu, Bazemore, guys like that, he's just going to sit on the 3-point line. But what I've seen is he's a guy that definitely wants to cut more than those guys do. So it doesn't need to be an area of emphasis for Derrick Jones Jr. specifically. It needs to be an area of emphasis for other players on the team, but for Derrick Jones Jr., it's he wants to cut regardless, so that is something that I like to see.
And that play you were talking about, I'd love to see this, because Dame afterwards said, my bad.
Yeah.
It wasn't oh, no, you're supposed to stay at the 3-point line. It was I got you. Next time, I know now that you're going to cut in that situation. I should have known that, and he put that on him, not Derrick Jones Jr. for cutting. So I like that he instead of him discouraging him from doing that next time he was like, I got you next time, don't worry.
Yeah.
Like that kind of attitude.
In that situation, Dame can pass the ball in a way where like it would get out to Derrick Jones Jr. if he spotted up, but if Derrick Jones Jr. is cutting, it will still like go to him and he can still catch it. You know what I mean? It's kind of hard because like if he's sitting on the 3-point line, you got to put some zip on it so that the defense doesn't pick it off. But if he's cutting, running towards it, and you put that zip on it, it's really hard to catch. So there's kind of like a fine line on that pass with how much velocity you want to put on it. You know, whereas like, okay, it can get out to him if he's on the 3-point line, but also it's not too fast where if he's cutting, he can't catch it, which was kind of that pass. You know, that pass was kind of to the side. That was part of the problem. But it was also like so fast because Dame was thinking zip it out to the 3-point line that there is no chance Derrick Jones Jr. could catch it. So, yeah, I mean, I definitely am excited to see like Derrick Jones Jr. get that type of chemistry with a Yusuf Nurkic, with a Damian Lillard, so that, you know, like he's going to be a guy that I think will cut more than anybody else we've had other than maybe a Jake Layman. And you saw with like Jake Layman, he like once Dame Nurkic got chemistry with him, they found him on those cuts. So I think that'll be like the next evolution of Derrick Jones Jr. on this team, is just getting the chemistry and knowing when he's going to cut, because guys have been so used to not having cutters and having guys just stand around.
And going back to his 3-point shot, I'm not as high on his form as you are, but he does seem really comfortable shooting spot-up threes. He took one tonight that was kind of off the dribble with a guy on him, and it looked really bad. But
we don't need him to do that. You know, Alfred Gomidu didn't do that, and Harkless didn't really do that.
But that's what I'm saying. If he just sticks to shooting the open three when it's there and not like forcing any bad ones, I think he can up his shooting percentage that way, just by shooting good shots and all that kind of stuff.
The shot clock was going down on that possession, so it's like, yeah, if, you know, the shot clock's at 4. I understand him shooting it off the dribble. But thank you to Trevin.
I beat him.
Did you beat him? You beat him to the punch.
Don't say the chat, Arik.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, him shooting spot up threes, like a spot up stroke, looks nice. Have you seen his shot a year ago?
Yeah,
do you not see the difference?
There is a little bit of a difference. He got the hitch gone away, but overall, I don't think it's too much different. I think he just seems more fluid with it, if that makes sense.
Well, it's more fluid because he got rid of the hitch, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what I think. But the thing is, like, the type of hitch he
had, awkward.
The type of hitch he had is like one of the worst type of hitches to have. Like, you don't want to like pop your shooting elbow or rotate it, because like when you're following through, it's going to make your touch inconsistent, but it's also going to make it inconsistent like right and left. And he also, like, the way he popped it made his shot flat. I feel like his shot has a little bit more arc, because I feel like a lot of his misses, just off the tape that I've watched, a lot of his misses came short because his shot was flat, and it seemed like it had something to do with his shooting elbow. Like when you had a little bit more of like a hitch with his shooting elbow, the shot was a little bit more flat, and he missed front rim a lot of times, or back rim. If he didn't miss front rim, it was usually back rim. So that's the thing, is like he has a little bit better arc now, and he's gotten rid of that hitch. It doesn't look too much different, you know, a bunch of other things are the same, but that hitch, just getting rid of that, I think could improve his 3-point efficiency by a decent clip, from like a 28%er to like a 35%er, because that type of hitch really messes with your shot. So it's still a little weird, you know. He's and a lot of lefties do this. A lot of lefties actually shoot other side of their head. CJ Ellaby does it. D'Angelo Russell does it. Derrick Jones Jr. does it. Like, his set point is kind of on the other side of his head a little bit, and his elbows, you know, like his forearm is kind of sideways, but his elbow's generally in. It's not like his elbow's like way out, you know. His elbow's kind of in line with his body. The set point's just the other side of his head. But as long as he keeps his shooting elbow consistent, it'll be fine, you know. Because that's the thing. You don't want to rotate your shooting elbow. You just want to keep it consistent on your follow through. That's a huge key with shooting the ball. That's something that I've actually, you know, when I've gone through slumps myself, not to bring up my own play, but when I've gone through slumps myself, it's because like my shooting elbow isn't consistent. I'm like rotating it a little bit in on my follow through, a little bit out, and it just messes with your shot ton. So I think that is a huge step for him to take. I think it looks better than it's ever looked, and that's why I'm high on his form, is just because he has cleaned up that hitch.
Yeah. Speaking of hitches, Rashaan Holmes has a little bit
he was hitting threes a little bit early in his career, and now it's like he's awful. He didn't shoot any last year. He like regressed in that department, which is weird because it seems like every big progresses in the modern day NBA in terms of 3-point shooting. But yeah, his shot is ugly, man. It's bad.
But he shoots a high percentage, and I guess he's good on him for knowing not to shoot him, I guess. But
yeah, but like he shot in 2016, 2017, he shot 1.5 threes per game and shot 35%. And then the year after, he only shot half a three per game and shot 13%. And then the next 2 years, he didn't make a single three. So that's just crazy to me how he's regressed in that area. And now it's like he's trying to work that back into his game. But dude, that guy's shot has no flow. It's ugly. Might as well just if you're going to let Rashaan Holmes shoot threes with that type of form, they might as well just let Hassan Whiteside shoot. Which is also, okay, let me just... Where's Hassan, man? I wanted to see Hassan.
Yeah, I don't know. He had
Is he hurt?
Yeah, he had like I forgot what they said last game, like an ankle or a foot issue or something like that. Calf strain.
Dang, I wanted to see Hassan. When do we play him next? I forget. Somebody let me know in chat when we play the Kings next. I want the Hassan Whiteside revenge game. You know he's actually going to try for that game, so he's actually probably going to be pretty good when he plays us next, even if he's coming off the bench. That'll probably be his best game of the year. So, let's. What do you want to talk about? You want to talk about box score?
A couple more things about the offense. So when we did have the starters in, I'm going to be harping on this a lot this season. Pushing the ball is good for this team. And one of the reasons for that is oftentimes when we push the ball and we push it ahead to Dame, who's already like in the front court, he had several times where he got the ball and he was already in a mismatch situation without even having to do a pick and roll. So he had one time where like Bielitsa had to pick him up and another time where Hield had to pick him up. And so like pushing the ball leads to a little bit of chaos with the defense, and they have to just guard whoever they're closest to in some situations. So that's another reason to do that, because Dame can feast and get a lot better shots if he's got like Bielitsa guarding on him, and he doesn't even have to possibly get double teamed because of a pick and roll hedge or trap or anything like that.
Yeah. And honestly, I'm cool with like, okay, the three that Gary Trent Jr. took in transition, where Dame had that steal, and then it was like kind of like a 2-on-1, 3-on-2 type of situation, and Gary Trent Jr. took a wide open three. Like, that's not necessarily what you're, if you're in high school and college, that's not what you're coached to do, right? But in the NBA, you look at like the way the Warriors play. If that's Clay, like that's the shot they're getting and they're taking and they're happy with, and that helps them like being willing to shoot those shots and shoot them confidently and not be scared to like take an open three in transition leads to them like having insane 12-0 runs that just demoralize the other team, can get them back into the game fast. So like those type of threes I'm cool with if it's from like a CJ McCollum, a Damian Lillard, a Gary Trent Jr., even, Carmelo, if he's hot, I'm cool with Carmelo taking those shots as well. I'm not sure if I'm missing somebody specifically. Covington even, because I think Covington's a good
Melo's good in those situations as well.
Yeah, so Melo, Covington, Gary Trent Jr., Rodney Hood, if he gets back to shooting like how he did last season, CJ McCollum, Damian Lillard, like, honestly, it's like our half-court offense, if we get that type of shot, even if it's with 16 on the shot clock, we're happy with it. So I'd love to get lay-ins in transition, but, if you can't get a lay-in, get that open three from a really good shooter. We have good shooters on this team. Because those threes, and when they go in, they build momentum, they can swing momentum, they can spark a run like that. So I'm cool with those. Gary Trent Jr. ended up missing that three, but I was completely happy with that shot selection.
Yeah, and so we had a time where Nurk got a steal, and Dame was kind of calling for the ball, but he just dribbled the ball up, and then so he like dribbled to the side, and Melo came off, and he just handed it to Melo, and Melo gets a wide open look for three. I don't remember if it went in or not, but like stuff like that is it's way better than like slowing the ball up and then trying to get into our half court and then doing the ISO crap we were doing tonight. So yeah, it's that guy needs to be banned. There, Reek guy.
Which guy?
Oh, he was already warned about spamming.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. Chat's going crazy.
That's what we got. The mods will take care of it. Yeah, if somebody spams twice in a row and like we say don't spam and then they start spamming, then feel free to like permanently hide their channel mods. Hopefully we won't have to really call anything out, you know. I know our mods are still kind of new to post-game streams and still new to this, like Reese especially. But yeah, basically mid-season, you know, I don't know. I don't want anybody to be like put in timeout unless it's like obvious that they're blatantly either disrespecting us or people in chat, like being disrespectful or spreading political conspiracy theories, like stuff like that doesn't belong here on a basketball channel and chat, or if they're spamming, like, and if they do it multiple times in the same stream when they've been warned by a mod, like you guys can warn them in chat, then yeah, just feel free, you know, like 3-strike rule, whatever, to permaban them so we don't have to call them out on stream, because honestly, people that do that type of stuff do not deserve our attention on the air, you know what I mean? But it can be kind of distracting. And last year, I just like handled it and called it out and handled it myself. But now we got the mods in there to help us out. So shout out to Trevin, Westbrick, and Reese for helping us with that.
Yep. And then, so the other thing, so the first few plays we ran through Nurk in the high post, which I like. But the problem was, so we passed to Nurk, and it was either everyone was just standing there, so what is he supposed to do when he gets the ball?
Yeah.
Or it was the same stuff we do all the time where it's just the guard comes back up and receives a handoff from him, going away from the basket towards half court, and then has to curl around and by that time his defender's already back on him. So I like playing through Nurk. I want to play through Nurk at the high post, but unless he has off-ball movement and our offense is not stagnant, it totally takes that option and that weapon away from us. So once again, I'm hoping that's just something that we were like showing that we would get into those sets and that we're going to have new wrinkles and new stuff once the actual games start, hopefully. But like, I don't want to see situations where we're running ISO and running the offense through Nurk, which should lead to easy buckets if people are doing stuff off ball, and then it resulting in us getting bad shots because we're not doing that.
Yeah, I think you could do some like Golden State-esque type of stuff in the half court with Nurkic as a passer, basically playing the Draymond role. You got, you know, Dame and CJ, Stephen Clay, pretty comparable, and then Robert Covington's a good 3-point shooter, you know, kind of like a la Harrison Barnes, if we're talking about before KD went there, and just how beautiful their offense was, and the ball movement, the type of shots they got off of it, and the player movement. Like, you could do similar stuff with the use of Nurkic in the Draymond role, Dame and CJ in the Stephen Clay role, Covington in the Harrison Barnes role, right? And then you got Derrick Jones Jr. as the other guy, right? Whereas like Golden State, they were doing that with like Andrew Bogut in the game, who can't shoot and is just like a plotting center, right? But instead of like Andrew Bogut, we got Derrick Jones Jr., who's a phenomenal cutter and a phenomenal lob threat. We could really come up with some creative sets and creative ways to make everybody off the ball playing off of Nurkic a threat. And Nurkic can throw all types of passes and make reads. We really need to utilize his playmaking this year, in my opinion. And it's like, you got Dame and CJ. They're Dame and CJ. Covington can shoot. Derrick Jones Jr. is a great lob threat and cutter. Like, you should be able to work that all into some set stuff, or, you know, some like structured freelance where you're utilizing Dame, CJ, Covington as shooters or catching the ball on the move and able to attack, and using Derrick Jones Jr. as like a screen setter, cutter, you know, backdoor screens for him, just using him as a mover off the ball who can catch the ball and attack, who can catch the ball, finish around the rim, or, you know, can catch lobs, backdoor, whatever they may be. Because honestly, I think that type of offense is really hard to guard even in the playoffs, and I think if we ran that type of offense in the playoffs, our offense would be far better than it's ever been in the playoffs under Stotts.
Yeah, and I saw this in one of the bubble games. I think it was against, it might have even been the first game against Memphis. Um, so we ran a play where Nurk had the ball, and Dame would go and set a pick for Melo in the corner, and Melo would curl off it towards the hoop. And it's such a simple, like, off ball play, but if Melo's open off the pick like he was. One of the plays he scored easily on a lay-in. The other time he got fouled and got 2 free throws. So like that opens him up for easy baskets. If they start to overplay it, then you have Dame coming like popping out of the pick and he could be open for a three. And there's so many different like wrinkles you could have Dame like fake a pick and then just cut back door or something like that. Like there's so many things you could do out of just one simple pick. That's all it takes is to do something simple like that, and you could create so much more offense and passing lanes for Nurk to throw to people. I don't know why we didn't even like do stuff like that the rest of the bubble. Or like in the playoffs or anything. So I just hope we see a lot more of that once the actual games start.
Yeah, and I might be a little bit critical if we don't see that type of stuff because there's no reason we shouldn't see that type of stuff. You know what I mean? We got the players to be able to run that type of stuff, and we got the playmaking big to be able to throw some of those passes, and we got the pieces to do it. So we should end up being able to. You know, there's no excuse in terms of like roster for not being able to do that. We have better pieces than ever to be able to run a good half-court motion offense and utilize Nurkic's playmaking with the combination of guys we have off the ball now. So there's definitely something I want to see. I will be disappointed if we don't see more of that this year. So do you have any more team-based things, or should I go down the box?
We can go to the box score.
All right. Should I start with the Kings and just kind of overview them, or should I end with the Kings? Let's start with the Kings. Rashaan Holmes was acting crazy today, man. That dude was acting wild, fouling guys hard. He had 6 fouls in 26 minutes. It reminded me of Dwight Howard last year in the playoffs. You hate to see a guy playing like that in the preseason. I understand it in the playoffs. It's the preseason, man. You got to chill, Rashaan Holmes. He actually made a three. I must have missed that. I didn't realize he hit a three. I remember he missed badly. Yeah, I guess I was tweeting or something during that possession. I guess I missed that one, but he had 14 points, led him in scoring. They also had Darren Fox play 25 minutes. He was a little bit better tonight, I think, than he was the first time we played him, but he had 13 and 4. Bielitsa struggled from the 3-point line, normally he doesn't shoot 1 for 5 from the 3-point line. I feel like he's like the type of guy that normally kills us, that just is on fire against us. That was a guy I wanted this past offseason, but I'm happy with what we got. Kyle Guy is actually like an underrated player going into this year. I could see him being a rotation player for them. He had 14 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists in 23 minutes, shooting 3 for 7 from 3. He's just a smart player, and he can shoot the ball, and he can play make a little bit. And guys like those generally can get some sort of role, even if it's a fringe rotation role. Like, guys like those can generally be useful in a rotation. I feel like he's kind of underrated going into this year. What do you think on him?
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I wasn't super high on him in the draft, but I mean, if we leave him as open as he was on some of those threes tonight, he's the kind of guy that can kill you. One
of them was deep too, though. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, he's like the type of guy that's like might have deep range that's unheralded. You know what I mean? Because he the way he shoots, it seems pretty effortless for him to shoot from deep range, pretty smooth, so obviously he ain't Dame or anything, but one of those threes was pretty deep, and I feel like kind of shocked teams. So that's the thing, like, guys know Dame shoots deep threes, so they kind of get out on him. A guy like that who teams don't really know could get open looks from there pretty consistently, just because guys probably wouldn't guard him out all the way out, 30 feet away from the basket and whatnot, because that 1-3 on the far side was probably a 30-footer. So he's a guy who I think is pretty underrated going into this year. You had a guy who I've always liked. You had Metu. I know probably only 10% of the people in this stream know who Chimezie Metu is, but he was a guy I liked in the draft. He had 11 points in 12 minutes. Glenn Robinson, I forget he's on their team. He just kind of blends in. I feel like they have a lot of players that look kind of alike out there on the court, that don't have differentiating hairstyles like we do, Because I was mixing up like Glenn Robinson, Halliburton, Robert Woodard, guys like that. But
yeah, I feel like Robinson's kind of a waste on that team. I feel like he doesn't really fit in, though. I don't know.
He couldn't get picked up, which was surprising. I thought he'd get signed a little bit earlier. Frank Kaminsky airballed a 3. That was funny. His jump shot was off tonight. Tyrese Halliburton looked good. Who's like probably my favorite rookie going into this season. I really like Halliburton just as a person, as a player. Just he's a fun guy. So he had 11 points, 7 assists, 5 for 10 from the field. It's impressive whenever a rookie does decently in this preseason, just because they didn't have summer league, they didn't have the long lead up. You know what I mean? They literally got drafted less than a month ago, and now they're jumping into things. So anytime a rookie does well, it's pretty impressive. But that's the Kings. For us, we're led by Harry Giles. 19 points, 13 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, a block, 6 for 11 shooting, 1 for 1 from 3. That's an impressive stat line, man. 26 minutes putting up that stat line. He was great once again tonight. You had feel free to butt in and say anything you want about any of these players since I'm just running down the box score. Gary Trent Jr., 7 for 18, not, kind of, you'd want him to be a little bit more efficient from the field than that, but he did shoot 3 for 6 from 3 for 17 points, had 3 assists, couple steals. Derrick Jones Jr. looked solid again. Didn't go 6 for 6 tonight, but 3 for 8 from the field. 5 of those 8 shots were threes, but 2 for 5 from 3. You like to see it. Also 7 for 8 from the free throw line. He's not labeled as like a shooter, but he's a decent free throw shooter. 7 for 8 is good. Had 6 rebounds as well. CJ only played 14 minutes, but he was 5 for 7, 3 for 3 from 3. He was started pretty hot. His defense was kind of He made some really bad defensive mistakes, I think, on a couple different possessions, but it's preseason. He needs to get back in shape. I feel like he's probably the most out-of-shape Blazer, but that's the thing. CJ can be out of shape, and he's still as the kids would say, walking bucket, right? So CJ can still put up points on the board,
We already had the people in here that earlier. We need to trade him.
Yeah, we need to trade him. Anthony's better than him. I've seen that already just based off this preseason. It's like, okay. He's a little hefty right now, but he can still score the ball. I just want to see defensive improvement, and he seems a little bit out of shape. He'll get there. He'll be fine. Other than him, Carmelo kind of struggled tonight. 3 for 9 from the field, 1 for 3 from 3. But, he was hot in the first preseason game, and then he didn't hit the same amount of shots. He 3 for 9 was for a bad night. 3 for 9 is okay. He kind of had some nights last season where he went 1 for 10, 1 for 11, but that's because we had to rely on him. So, that's fine. This is what you'll kind of get from Carmelo. You'll have nights where he doesn't really make shots and shoots 3 for 9, and it's not the best shooting clip, and then you'll have nights where he gets hot like he did in the first preseason game. Rodney Hood made his return. Let's talk about that, because there's really nobody else I even really want to talk about in this lineup, because people didn't really play that much. But Rodney Hood returned, was 1 for 4, had 4 assists. I don't really remember many of those specifically, but he had 4 assists, 2 points. How do you think he looked just based on just him running up and down the court, him moving on the basketball court coming off this Achilles tear?
I thought that's fine. Obviously we tried to give him the ball to get a couple shots up. That I didn't include that in my isolation breakdown or anything like that. But I thought he looked fine. So Kyle Arroyo had a question earlier, and I told him I would get to it when we talked about Hood. He said that after the game, Hood said his Achilles was still a little sore, and is that a troublesome thing that he's still having soreness down there? So based off my own personal experience, I had Achilles surgery last August, and it's something that'll always be a little sore. It's never going to feel 100% ever again, but it's not something that's concerning to the point where it could pop again because it's sore, if that makes sense. It's not pre-injury where it was sore and you should rest it or whatever.
It's not like a weakened state, so to say.
It's just like if you work out, your muscles are sore afterwards. It's like that kind of sore, not like
I get
oh
that.
man, this is like weak type of sore,
Yeah. I never used to have any soreness there ever until about like a year and a half ago, and then generally like my Achilles are kind of sore after I play pickup games. Obviously, I haven't done it in 9 months, which sucks, but yeah. So I kind of know that feeling. I know what you mean.
Well, for me, so I had surgery in August. I just got cleared sometime in February to play like basketball again.
But it wasn't necessarily a torn Achilles, was it? Or did they have to?
No, yeah, it wasn't a torn Achilles, but I had to have like a surgery that they basically had to like cut through it to do the surgery. So it was basically like the same or similar recovery process.
Yeah.
But like, so I get cleared to play basketball. I played like 5 times, and I was like, just like getting to the point where I could actually run up and down the court. And then, then COVID hits, and haven't been able to play since. So
9 months later, you're back where you started.
Yeah.
And I'm there too. Dang
it's gotten a lot of rest, but
yeah. So I don't know, like the medical staff. I was about to say knows what they're doing, but they played him on a sore Achilles last year, and then he tore it, and then I went on a rant, and that's one of the OGs know the Rodney Hood rant after he tore his Achilles. I was very frustrated with that, but yeah, so I don't know. I mean, it should be fine. It did seem like he had less lift, but that's to be expected. He'll need some time to get his legs underneath him, because he's a guy who gets a lot of lift on his jump shot. It seemed like he wasn't quite getting that same lift necessarily. It wasn't like too far off, but he'll need a little bit of ramp up time to kind of get back to how he was before. So I don't expect him to be quite as athletic and get quite as much lift on his jump shot, but he's not like, hopefully he can still knock down spot up threes at a 38% clip. Because if he can do that, and hopefully he can still slide laterally and be an okay defender, if he can do that, then he's a good player, in my opinion. A guy that can help you here and there on the defensive end and knock down shots. And then, if he gets it going, he's a guy that can go and create shots off the dribble. Like, that's a good bench player in the NBA. So I still think he can probably do all those things, even if he doesn't quite fully have his legs underneath him. I just, I can't wait till he hopefully gets back to normal.
I don't know if this is just like he put on weight because he couldn't exercise, which is most likely it, but he does look a little bigger, and at his size, like, I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. Like, I felt like he's more able to like go up against a little bigger 3s and 4s maybe if he's a little bigger, because he was kind of lanky and wasn't the strongest guy before. So if he worked on his strength a little bit, and that's more muscle than like chunkiness, it might not be a bad thing if Hood's a little stronger on defense.
Yeah. I mean, the flip side of that is he's a guy that likes to rise up in the mid-range and rise up above defenders to shoot mid-range pull-ups, and if he gets a little bit less lift, then that's a little bit more difficult. So that's kind of the downside with that, Yeah, I just said weight-wise, whatever he's comfortable with, because, I mean, like, if he's, like, overweight and, like, out of shape, he's not going to be comfortable with that, right? He could be a little bit heavier than he was last year and be comfortable with that, and if he's more comfortable with that and finds that that's kind of the best playing weight for him, then cool, you know what I mean? He'll get to his preferred playing weight this season at some point, you know what I mean? Maybe that's kind of the weight he is at now. Maybe he needs to lose a few pounds to be fully comfortable. That's kind of, only he knows what his preferred playing weight is. But yeah, I mean, like, he's a guy that uses his body well, so a little bit extra on that wouldn't hurt in that regard, and kind of holding his own against some bigger small forwards, guys like LeBron, Kawhi, if he has to guard him. So yeah, I mean, we weren't going to see much of him, and it'll be interesting to see how many minutes he plays on opening night when the games actually count and how he looks then. But I'm not worried about him. There's going to be a ramp up process for him, and I'm not going to overreact. And I feel like at some point you will hear people saying, "Man, Rodney Hood ain't the same. He fell off. People will say crap like that when it's literally just him not playing for a year, coming in off Achilles injury, and needs time to get back to the type of player he was before. So not going to overreact to that here. We'll be patient with him, and we can because we have the depth.
Yep. And along those same lines, it was nice to see Nurk out there looking fine. Even took a hard fall today, got hit in the head.
Good old Rashaan Holmes, man.
Right back to getting hit in the head every game, right?
I know. Yeah, that's his. Yeah. I'm cool with him getting hit in the head if he's, obviously don't want him concussed or anything. But it seems like he has a pretty hard head, It doesn't seem like he ever really has any, concussion issues. Has he ever even had a concussion in his career for as many times as he's got hit in the head? I don't think he's ever missed time for a concussion in a Blazer uniform. So, rather him get hit up there than hit down below around the legs. That's the scary stuff when you start getting hit down there if somebody falls on you. That's more of like a football thing, but it can happen in basketball. But you got these guys like Dwight Howard and Rashaan Holmes that just want to hit Nurkic in the face 3 times a game, and it's kind of annoying, but it is what it is.
Yep.
So, anything else you want to touch on, or you want to take questions from
someone? Someone has been asking about Blevins throughout the chat.
He actually didn't look too bad tonight, honestly.
He was horrible, yeah.
He was 1 for 5, 1 for 3 from 3, but had a nice pass and hit a 3, and that's a little bit more than I was expecting from him. So, I don't know. I'm not expecting anything from Blevins, and I don't think he's really an NBA player. If he disagrees with that, then I invite him to prove me wrong. If he balls out or something next preseason game, cool, round of applause. I don't think he's a guy that we really brought in to have to rely on or anything, and hopefully we don't have to rely on him. I think he's good enough where you can justify having him on the team, but you pretty much have him on the team because he's Dame's cousin, if that makes sense. That's basically what that is.
And it looks like they're going to rule that you can have 15 players active instead of 13. So it'll be interesting to see if he's even active for games early on in the season, because you can only be active for 50 out of the 72 games. So,
I assume if we're fully healthy or only missing one guy, so Zach Collins or whatever, then we'll probably keep him on the inactive list until because he basically has to be inactive for 22 games. So once he's inactive for 22 games, they'll just have him on the roster. But I feel like we'll probably, in case stuff hits the fan like it did last season, probably try and save his active games for a time where, we might need him in case of emergency.
Yep.
Which hopefully isn't, in the first week of the season.
And then let's just touch on the CJ Ellaby crap. I saw so much hatred. Who cares if he struggles? This guy hasn't played a game since March, first of all. Second of all, this is our first 2 NBA games. He's had literally a few practices as an NBA player. He just got drafted a few weeks ago. It's not like a normal offseason where you get drafted, you would have practices leading up to summer league, you'd have a full summer league, and then you'd have, 3-4 months to go before the season even starts, full training camp of a month long where you would get to practice with your team and all that kind of stuff. He's not going to play this year. He does not matter at all. If he does matter at all this season, our season's over anyway, because there would have to be 3 or 4 guys getting injured for him to actually get any meaningful time this season. So there's literally no reason to trash CJ Ellaby or say he's the worst player in the league, or I'd rather have Mario Hezonja back or all that crap that I saw tonight, because I wasn't happy when we drafted him. It was apparent we were both kind of mad. But I'm not gonna base anything off of these games in the preseason. This is gonna be a project developmental guy. He was only drafted because we could basically sign him for less than we could sign any minimum free agent to on the market, and we needed to stay under the tax. And we can't cut him because that completely defeats the purpose of drafting him and giving him the minimum contract because his contract is guaranteed. So we had someone in here saying like, "Oh, we should just cut him because
No,
anyone's better than him. We should sign Bart Simpson instead of him."
Here's the thing: his biggest strength is his jump shooting, right? His jump shot has been awful during these first 2 preseason games. But that's not who he is as a shooter. He's a better shooter than that. And if he was shooting decently, people wouldn't be hating on him at all right now. Because, like, everything else, like, defensively, you know, he doesn't look bad defensively. Honestly, like, you know, foot speed wise, you know, maybe he's lacking a little bit, but his help side rotations were good below the pick and roll. You know, he got scored on at the rim by bigs, but at least he was there, you know what I mean? And maybe should try and take a charge, but at least he's there and rotating. And it seems like he's a smart defender. You know, he's not going to wow you with athleticism or anything, but he's a smart defender. And, you know, he had a nice cut tonight and got a layup, and seems like he fits within a team offense. It's just like his jump shot stopped falling, and he's shooting pretty much mainly jump shots. So it's like, okay, if he was hitting some of these jump shots, he would look fine for a rookie that got drafted less than a month ago with the 46th overall pick. You know what I mean? Like, Gary Trent Jr. didn't shoot well in summer league, and during his, you know, he didn't really play any at all during his first year as a Blazer, but he didn't shoot well, you know what I mean? Like, Anthony, during his first real action last year, he didn't shoot well, you know what I mean? So Ellaby is a guy who can hit jump shots, right? And if you just watch these 2 preseason games, you wouldn't think that, but based on his scouting report, based on what he did at Washington State, like, he's a guy who can hit jump shots, and if he was hitting these jump shots like I think he can, he wouldn't be hated on. So I think everybody's just overreacting to a 46th pick rookie who got drafted less than a month ago, coming into 2 preseason games and missing some jump shots. That's literally all that is. And we don't have to rely on him. There's no point to even overreact. Like, we don't have to rely on him. You know, and if he, like, sucks all season long in practice and the team is like, next offseason, oh, we don't want to keep this guy, then they cut him and we move on, and it's not a big deal. You know, so that's the thing. Everybody, like, hating on him and overreacting to him, I think is kind of ridiculous, and I think people just got to chill out when it comes to him.
And the other thing, I mean, I've harped on this a lot when it comes to Ant versus Gary Trent Jr., and we saw that tonight with both Gary Trent and CJ Ellaby. My point was that Simons last year was required to try and learn the backup point guard position, which is different from what Trent had to do, which is just hit threes and play defense. And he can excel at both of those things because that's all he has to work on. But Simons has to also learn how to run an offense and do those kind of things. So you saw tonight where Trent and CJ Ellaby at times were our backup point guard and played point guard and brought the ball up, and they struggled trying to initiate an offense and then trying to do all the other things. Those things fall off because you're trying to do too many things out there. And that's why I haven't given up on Ant yet either, is because I still feel like his learning curve is going to be a lot bigger than a Gary Trent Jr., who was already a good shooter coming in. So if you just come in and expect him to hit threes and play defense, like, that's something he can do. And props to Gary Trent Jr. for excelling in those 2 things, but he hasn't had the same sort of responsibilities that an Anthony Simons or a CJ Ellaby in this game, even though it was preseason, having to run a point guard offense in the NBA when you're not even a point guard like in college, you know, like,
yeah,
that's got to be a little difficult. So.
Honestly, he does look pretty smooth with his handle, you know what I mean? He's not going to wow you in that regard, but he can, like, handle the ball a little bit, and his defense has been a little bit better than I thought. So, like, I'm actually a little bit higher on him than I was before, because I think he'll be a guy that can hit jump shots. He just struggled in 2 preseason games, whereas, like, the other stuff I'm looking for, he's been, like, I wouldn't say necessarily impressive, but a little bit better than I expected. So the stuff that I'm really looking for and judging him off of, I'm not worried off of, based off, you know, like, the defense and the you know, maybe handling the ball a little bit. Like, he's okay in that regard. He actually had a drive where he got to the rim, and I think he missed the layup, but he got to the rim on a drive, which is, like, I don't really expect him to be a slasher. So doing that, even though he missed the layup, okay, at least he got there. That's a start. You know what I mean? It's a guy you have to develop and be patient with. So people just don't overreact to preseason, and don't overreact to stuff like that. That's all I gotta say.
And the thing is, if we had a fully healthy team, we would have seen, like, Ant and Little and Collins out there tonight too. So, like, I mean, you wouldn't even have noticed like Blevins and Ellaby that much. So, like, I mean, we basically didn't try this game. We started Blevins and LB in the second half. Dame and CJ didn't play in the second half. I don't think Melo did either. Like we didn't. We're just throwing them out there like to get through a game. It wasn't like, oh, these guys are going to be great. Watch this second round pick we got. Like we didn't draft CJ LB to come in and be some dominant force on this team this year. So like I'm willing to give him some time to just chill and I will be critical of him if he doesn't develop, and I will continue to be critical of that pick, especially if some of the guys that were on the board that both you and I wanted to draft instead, Torrey, end up being good players. But until the season hasn't even started yet, so there's no point in like being like someone, oh well, so and so went 3 for 6 instead of 1 for 7 in a preseason game, so there obviously would have been a better pick for us than CJ was. But so
just don't overreact to 2 preseason games.
Chill out.
Yeah, that's pretty much the message there. So we'll take your questions for like the last 5 to 10 minutes.
Sure, Weezy was asking about when Little was back. So the Blazers have given no information. They haven't even said what's wrong with Little. Stotts slipped and said he was sick, so we're assuming that's the player that got COVID, obviously, because everyone else is with the team right now. So it's got to be him that had COVID, but like they've given us no information. We have no idea if he's expected to be back sometime soon or what degree he's feeling symptoms or whatever. So like no one knows anything. So like Tori and I are obviously would just be speculation if we tried to guess, like Reese is doing.
Yeah. What was our thoughts on LaMelo? I mean, we're not gonna base anything off one preseason game, but me and Eric are not as high on LaMelo as other people. We did drop a draft profile on him. If you guys wanna like get our full breakdown of our thoughts on him, we got some hate comments on that, because there's some Melo fans, some LaMelo fans. We were getting hate from 2 types of Melo fans in the past few months, but yeah, I'm not as high on LaMelo. I think his ceiling is like a fringe all-star, and honestly, I don't think it's likely he gets there.
Your boy Leandro got cut.
I know, man. That hit me hard, man, because like that was basically me in terms of talent level, right? So no. LiAngelo Ball is not NBA caliber, man. I think Blevins is probably better than him, so sucks he didn't. I don't know why they didn't play him. Like, why did they sign him just to waive him so fast? I don't understand why teams do that. Why do you sign guys just to waive them like 2 days later?
I don't know. Like in normal years, it would be because like the Blazers do this because you could keep up to 20 guys and you could sign people to training camp rosters. But training camp was like 5 days this year, so I don't know why you would even bother with that.
Blazers didn't even mess around with that, so yeah, I don't understand that. I mean, if we had our own G League affiliate, we'd probably have more guys in here, but we don't, so that's why we don't have any of those types of guys. We know what the team is going to be.
Vivek, once again, will wait to make any judgments until it's actual games that count.
Yeah, but I will judge you for handling your mic right now. I'm just kidding. If you sign someone just to waive them, you control their G League rights. I'm not sure about that, Eric.
There could be some stuff. Was Detroit one of the teams that decided not to send a team to the G League, though? I thought they were. So they don't even have a G League team this season, so I don't know why that would apply to this situation.
Yeah, the G League's super confusing this year. I kind of feel bad for the players that just decided to go that route before the pandemic, and now it's like, shoot, are they even going to have much of a season? I mean, they're going to get paid, but I wonder how it's going to affect their draft stock and all that.
Vivek Cristobal is not leaving Oregon for Auburn, so he just signed an extension too. But anyways,
I don't watch college football, though. There's a basketball channel. I don't even pay attention to college football.
Randall Wellman asks who will be the closest player on our team to win most improved, if anyone.
Probably Trent. But Trent kind of showed out in the bubble last year, so I don't know. Maybe, honestly, like...
Giles, man.
Giles probably won't get the minutes, though.
Yeah, but
Giles was like solid last year too. Like, you gotta have like legitimate statistical improvement, and Giles was true, like, I'm curious. I want to see his stats last year. Last year, Giles
he just
averaged,
looks so good. Like, I don't understand the Kings at all.
He averaged He averaged 14 minutes per game. He averaged 7 points and 4 rebounds per game in those minutes. Like, he'd have to at least be averaging like 16 points per game somehow. And I don't think you'll get the minutes to come close to that. You know what I mean? So in terms of like talent level, maybe he's like really improved, but you have to have like the production to back it up. So it has to be somebody that's like getting an increased role a la a CJ McCollum, you know, an increased role and or like increased talent level. So like Devontae Graham last year was a candidate. Brandon Ingram like really improved during the offseason and got a bigger role, like not necessarily minutes wise, but in terms of what he was doing for the team in New Orleans. Bam Adebayo increased talent wise and was given more like freedom to, you know, and just his talent level all around. His stats didn't like really wow you in terms of improvement, but like his talent level, his stats, like in terms of scoring, didn't really wow you, but like he had a huge upgrade in assists. I think his defense was more improved, stuff like that. Pascal Siakam's talent level improved monumentally from year 1 to year 3. So it's like guys like that. I don't know. Like if one of Dame or CJ got, I think it takes somebody having to get hurt for anybody on our team to have a legitimate chance of winning most improved.
Yeah, I think
it would take like CJ getting hurt, and then Gary Trent Jr. averages 35 points per game and gets like 20 points or 35 minutes per game. And gets,
I was going to say, if he averages 35 points a game, he will definitely.
Oh yeah, 100% and MVP. But like, you know, it takes CJ getting hurt, and then Gary Trent Jr. is starting to getting 35 minutes per game and averages 20 points per game, like something like that. Or like, you know, maybe that's scenario. Anthony Simons gets like 28 minutes per game and averages like 15 points per game off the bench or something insane as like a candidate for sixth man. Like, it would have to take something like that.
A lot of people are saying Derek Jones just because he's getting minutes and is a starter, but I don't know if his overall stats will be high enough to warrant. Like, it'll look better than his stats last year, most likely, but I don't know if they'll be like, because even if you go from a few points a game to like 10 points a game, that's usually not most improved. It's more like 6 or 7 to like 18.
Yeah, and he also averaged 8.5 points per game last season, 4 rebounds, so he'd have to get like 16, 17 points per game. I don't think that's going to happen. Yeah, so... But like talent level, he could be improved. He's just like not the guy who's going to put up the stats necessary to win that award. So like a dark horse for most improved player would be Darius Bazley. I think is a legit dark horse. I think he might average 17, 18 points per game. His team sucks. He's probably going to start. He has the talent level. He started putting it together in the bubble, and now he's going to have like a far increased role in my opinion. And he has the scoring potential to put up those types of numbers. So like that's honestly might be my pick for most improved player. You know, me and Eric loved Darius Bazley in the draft last year. So like that's probably my dark horse pick. I don't know if that's like my number one pick for most improved, but just off the top of my head, that's like who I think. In case you guys were wondering,
Destro, of course, thinks Ant can make the jump, but he's not going to get the minutes to warrant that.
Yeah.
And Shervin, let me just talk to you, man. You know better than this. So. We're answering a question. We're talking about the question. You ask another question and then complain about getting ignored while we're still answering the previous question. Come on, man. You're better than that. Like,
yeah.
Just wait till we're done and then ask the question next. Like,
we're not going to be able to answer all your questions anyway either. You got 125 people in here, you know what I mean? But that's like what mailbags and stuff are for, and like we're pretty active on Twitter, you know? So, yeah, you know, I wish I could easily answer every question, but...
He wants us to talk about Talen Horton Tucker's performance today.
Why?
Dude, bro, preseason. It's preseason. He scored 33 points and had...
Did he?
Yeah.
I mean, good for him, but
he had a monster game, but like, yeah.
Do it in the regular season, and then like I'll have a reaction. You know what I mean?
Like, I mean, he's a decent player. He just didn't get minutes, so they're really good last year. But he might find his way into the rotation this year. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, he's a guy who could like legitimately like make the jump to a rotation player in his second year. But also, it's a young Laker player doing good, who's gonna get overhyped like crazy off of one preseason game. So I don't want to be in there doing, you know, contributing to that, so to say. So And bro, Shervins, we wouldn't ignore you on purpose, man. Why would we ignore you on purpose?
See, that's the other thing. If we're just sitting here like, oh, okay, I guess there's no more questions, and Shervin's like asking a question, that's ignoring you. But like, if we're like literally talking, because people do this all the time too, when we're talking about the game and stuff like that, and someone's like Shervin's earlier, prime example. At the beginning of this thing, we were talking, breaking down the game, and Shervin's like, hey, talk about Taylor Horton-Tucker, talk about THT. It's like, dude, we talked to you about that so many times last year with post-game shows about, like, not asking questions that are not relevant to the game we're talking about, and then, then you think you're being ignored.
Like, those types of questions I might ignore, but that's because we're breaking down the game, you know what I mean? And we'll have time to, like, answer questions and whatnot, but start a game when there's 200 people in here and we're breaking down like things that happened on the court, like we're probably not going to answer a question about a Laker player, you know, if we're playing the Kings. So don't take it personally, man. It's not personal. We have literally nothing against you. The only thing I have against you is the fact that I bet you $20 that DK Metcalf wouldn't get 1,150 receiving yards this season, and I've already lost that bet. That's the only part that I'm triggered about. I didn't think they'd let Russ loose like that, but so we'll answer a couple other questions. Are we lagging, Reese, or are you trolling me, bro? Because I don't think we're lagging.
I haven't seen any lag.
Reese, why are you trolling me? You're a mod. You're not supposed to troll me. How about MPJ? He sucks.
Peace and Love was asking, starting the season, we got Nuggets, Rockets, Lakers, Clippers, Warriors, few 2 and 3 considered a win. We actually played the Warriors twice at the end of that, so it's the first 6 games.
Would 2 and 3 be a win? No.
No.
What standard are we holding ourselves to? Contention level. Like, I'm not saying we're there, but that's the standard we need to hold ourselves to. So a win would be like 4 and 2 against 6 projected playoff teams. Like, Warriors are kind of fringe, right? Like, we should have a winning record.
He missed Utah in there too.
Yeah, like we're a better team than Utah. We're a better team than Golden State. We're a better team than Denver's in there, right?
Denver and Houston.
Like, we're a better team than Denver, in my opinion. We're a better team than Houston.
Is Denver in there?
No, I don't think Denver's in there.
I think he put Denver instead of Utah.
No, it's Utah, Houston, both LA teams, and Golden State twice. So, like, the only 2 teams in there that I'd say we aren't, like, that I don't think we're necessarily better than are the Clippers and the Lakers. But we should still, like, be competitive in those games and maybe get one of those games, right? But we're better than 4 out of those 6 teams in the first 6 games. So, anything less than 4 and 2 would be an L, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Like, this isn't last year. We got to hold ourselves to a higher standard than we did last year with everything that the team was dealing with.
Yep. So Caleb asked the question, if we stay under the tax this season, as Neil has said they want to, do we have access to the full mid-level exception? So this year has no bearing on next year. So that we'll have access to the full mid-level exception if we are not a tax, if we can do so while staying under the hard cap line. So yeah, we shouldn't be in a situation unless we have to super overpay for Gary Trent Jr. and Zach Collins. But I don't see us being close enough to the hard cap line to where we wouldn't be able to use the full mid-level exception. But at the very least, we'd have the taxpayer mid-level exception next summer, which is a little less than that. But either way, it just depends on what our finances are. So not knowing what our roster is post-trade deadline, who will still be on the team, how we'll value guys like Gary Trent Jr. and Harry Giles, trying to keep those kind of guys. But yeah.
Yeah, the easiest way to explain it is we've already used our mid-level exception this year. That's Derek Jones. So, like, whatever we do tax-wise this season doesn't matter. We've already used our mid-level exception. Basically we're just going to stay under the tax. Like, based on the ownership, we're going to stay under the tax anyway, but it doesn't affect next year. The new season, like, it basically refreshes right before the off season. So the mid-level exception next free agency is, like, refreshed based on what our salary situation is next off season and the season following.
And we don't even know what the cap will be next year, and all that kind of stuff. So it's impossible to know exactly what it'll be right now. Shaggy Squid, if he's still in here, asked a question along those similar lines. Will we have to choose between keeping Gary Trent Jr. and Harry Giles, or what's the likelihood of keeping them?
I mean, I don't know. Like, I've gotten into that in like streams, like a Monday, Thursday stream. Maybe we could get into that. It's like, I'm not really worried about that type of stuff right now. You know what I mean? Like, we're gonna have some tough decisions to make next offseason, but like this season's just starting. So in terms of like what we're gonna do next offseason, I'm kind of just like, meh.
I just want to say, for the people worried about Gary Trent Jr. turning down the extension, I'll say this every time. It's not a big deal. We have the rights to match any contract for him next summer if we choose to do so. It doesn't matter that he turned it down. He's probably looking at making more money next summer. It would have been silly in his position to take that contract right now, knowing that he could possibly get more in the next offseason. So it had nothing to do with him not wanting to be here or not liking the Blazers or not liking the offer. We offered him the most we could. He thinks he could possibly get more from another team or from us next year when we can offer him more than what we could offer him this summer, and that's that. In terms of Harry Giles, same thing. We can use the mid-level exception to re-sign him. If he gets more than that because he balls out this year, then there's not really a way to keep him unless we traded a bunch of people and created cap space, but not really worth worrying about right now.
Yep. So anyway, I think I'm going to wrap it up here. My voice is getting a little tired, man. I got to get back into the streaming. Like, I got to get my stamina up. I'm in preseason mode too because like my voice starts to get a little tired, you know. Believe it or not, a little tired of talking.
And that's another thing. So Collins and Giles, we don't have to decide between those two. Collins is the same way as Gary Trent Jr. We'll have the rights to sign him and go over the cap to do so. Giles, and it will not affect what we can offer to Giles at all. Neither Trent or Collins affects Giles. So, and Cantor is a free agent next summer, so it could be a situation where we keep both Collins and Giles, and maybe I actually kind of am intrigued to see them play together possibly in some lineups too. So, and then we don't know if Melo will be part of the future after this season as well. So, like, there's room for both of them on the team if we want both of them.
If you have any more questions, you can hit Eric up at HoopsChalk. We got the names up there. So if you got any more questions on that, you can hit Eric up on Twitter. My Twitter is below my name at ToryJonesYT. Leave a like on this stream. It really does help us out. I know it's kind of cliche to ask for, but it does help us out with how well we do on YouTube, basically. Also, subscribe if you haven't already. This is our streaming channel, and we do Monday, Thursday streams, and then post-game streams for the preseason, and then during the regular season, if we like have long post-game streams, we'll probably switch. You know, I don't know. Well, I'll get into all that. Basically, just subscribe to this channel. Subscribe to our main channel. The link is in the description below. Just subscribe to both, and you won't miss anything. Other than that, that's a wrap for this post-game stream. Thank you guys for watching. I will have a mailbag video out tomorrow that I will be recording tonight. So if you have a question that you want to add to that mailbag video, leave it on here. Let me go find this real quick. If you have a question that you want me to answer in that video, then where are we at right here? Ads going to play. There we go. Then leave it in the comment section of this video that I'm linking in chat. Leave it in the comment section, and basically questions that are in that comment section I will answer in my next mailbag video, which will drop tomorrow. So we will have a live stream tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Pacific time, our normal Monday, Thursday streams. So if you guys want to come in and ask questions there, it should be a little bit lighter, and it should be a little bit more, relaxed. We're not going to be analyzing a full, game and performances and whatnot. So we should have a little bit more time to get to questions if we haven't answered yours. So like Bo L, that's a great question to ask on the mailbag or on the stream tomorrow night for both me and Eric. So yeah, we hope to see you there tomorrow. If not, we'll catch you whenever you tune in next. Thank you guys for all your support. With that, we're out of here. Hope you guys have a good rest of your night. As always, peace out. Go Blazers.